My anniversary should have been a romantic escape, a celebration of 5 years with the man I loved. Instead, it became the night I finally realized my husband would never choose me over his venomous family, and that my patience had run dangerously thin. I should have known that evening was doomed the moment we pulled into our driveway. Jake, my husband, had promised me a quiet, intimate dinner at our favorite spot, just the two of us. A rare chance to breathe, to escape the constant whirlwind of work, errands, and endless family obligations. But then I saw it, his mom's car, parked right there in front of our house. A cold dread coiled in my gut, immediately turning what should have been excitement into a familiar anxiety. I tried to push it down, to tell myself I was overthinking, but deep down I knew. Something was definitely off. My name is Amanda, I'm 32, and I've been married to Jake for 5 years. He's truly a good man, kind, supportive, generally easygoing. But his family? That's a whole different story. They've always had this subtle way of making me feel like an outsider, no matter how hard I tried to fit in. His mom, Linda, was the ringleader. To my face, she was sweet as pie, but behind closed doors, I could feel her judgment, her silent disapproval that I wasn't good enough for her son. The little digs she'd throw my way, the constant reminders of how Jake was never the same after he married me, it all added up. She was passive-aggressive to a point where I felt like I was constantly walking on eggshells around her. Still, for tonight I tried to banish those thoughts. This was supposed to be our night. I even wore my favorite dress, hoping it would be a nice change from the usual family gatherings where I always felt like a forgotten extra. Jake and I walked inside, and sure enough, there they all were. His mom, his dad, his 2 older sisters, all sitting at the dining room table, looking entirely too pleased with their surprise. Jake, bless his oblivious heart, just beamed. "Surprise," he announced, completely missing the look of utter defeat already forming on my face. I forced a smile, gave him a peck on the cheek, and sat down. The tension in the room was a living, breathing thing. Dinner started off stiff. Nobody was overtly rude, but there was a palpable chill in the air directed squarely at me. Linda would constantly talk over me if I dared to contribute to the conversation. Her daughters, both older and always a bit more polished, exchanged knowing glances every time I spoke, like I was some kind of spectacle. This wasn't new, but it was still incredibly grating. Every time I glanced at Jake, he was engrossed in conversation with his dad, utterly blind to my discomfort. I knew he was probably trying to keep the peace, but honestly, it just made everything worse. The more they ignored me, the more my frustration simmered. Then came the moment that pushed me right over the edge. After dinner, Linda suggested we all move to the living room for some family bonding time. Family bonding? I didn't feel like family at all. But I followed anyway, clinging to a sliver of hope that it might somehow improve. Linda, ever the hostess, insisted on serving dessert she'd clearly made herself. The cake was sickly sweet, the frosting thick enough to choke on, and I could feel her eyes on me as I tentatively picked up my fork. But the real tipping point came when she handed me a cup of coffee and, with a saccharine smile, said, "I didn't know you drank coffee, Amanda. You're always so health-conscious, aren't you?" The way she said it, like she was exposing some terrible secret, pointing out a flaw, made my heart slam against my ribs. It was such a small thing, yet the passive-aggressive jab felt like a physical blow. I tried to ignore it. I truly did. I tried to smile, to laugh at their stories, but it was becoming impossible. The longer I sat there, the more I felt like I was suffocating in that room, surrounded by people who clearly didn't want me there. They kept exchanging those private glances, sharing their little inside jokes. At one point, Rachel, Linda's oldest daughter, made a casual comment about how cute Jake used to be before he got married. The entire room went silent. That was it. I'd had enough. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor, a sound that cut through the silence. "Excuse me," I said, my voice trembling, but laced with a surprising steel. "Is there something you want to say to me directly? Because I'm getting really tired of this." Jake finally looked up, clearly startled, but instead of rushing to my defense, he just sat there, frozen. My face burned with embarrassment. I hated doing this in front of his family, but they had pushed me too far. "You've been ignoring me all night," I continued, my voice breaking with emotion. "No matter what I say, it's like I'm not even here. I'm your wife, Jake. I deserve better than this." Linda immediately slipped into her innocent act. "Amanda, darling, we didn't mean to upset you. We're just having a little family time, you know. It's not personal." But it was personal. Everything with her was personal. I had tried so hard to be kind, to fit in, but I knew, right then, she would never accept me. The anger swelled in my chest, a hot wave washing over the hurt bubbling to the surface. I turned to Jake, desperately searching for some support, but his eyes were wide, his face pale, utterly lost. I couldn't believe it. "If you can't stand up for me now, Jake," I whispered, my voice shaking, "I don't know what to say. I'm done." Without waiting for a response, I grabbed my purse and walked out. I heard Jake call after me, a desperate plea, but I didn't stop. I was done pretending everything was okay, done pretending their treatment didn't hurt. I got into my car, slammed the door with a satisfying thud, and drove off, no clear destination in mind. My mind was a whirlwind, my heart pounding, and I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't go back to that house. Not tonight. Not ever. I spent the night at a friend's house, lost in my thoughts. I couldn't stop replaying what had happened, how Jake had utterly failed to stand up for me. I was hurt, yes, but more than that, I was furious. Furious at his family for their constant belittling, and furious at him for letting it slide, for not backing me up. I didn't know what came next, but I knew one thing for sure: things were not going to stay the same. The next morning, I woke to a text from Jake, "Please come home. We need to talk." I stared at the message for a long time, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. If I went back now, would I be giving in? Would it mean the end of everything if I didn't? I sat there, paralyzed by indecision, when a thought sparked in my mind. Maybe, just maybe, it was time for me to take control. Time for me to send a message they wouldn't forget. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do, but I knew it was going to make them regret treating me like this. I typed my response slowly, each word feeling heavy with purpose. "I'll be home later, but when I get there, things are going to change." Then I hit send. The drive home was a blur, my mind still racing with the events of the previous night and the text I'd just sent. I didn't feel calmer. If anything, the anger had only intensified. I had been patient for so long, always trying to be the good wife, the understanding daughter-in-law, the one who smiled through the hurt. But last night, I had hit my limit. I wasn't letting it go anymore. When I walked through the front door, the tension was palpable. Jake was on the couch, his eyes red-rimmed, like he hadn't slept a wink. He stood quickly when he saw me, a mix of relief and deep uncertainty on his face. "Amanda," he started, but I cut him off. "No, Jake. No more apologies," I said, my voice firm, unwavering. "I'm done with this. I'm done with your family treating me like I'm invisible, and I'm done with you not standing up for me." He opened his mouth as if to argue, but I held up my hand. "You know, I've tried, Jake. I've tried to be patient, tried to make it work, but they have no respect for me. And last night, when I needed you the most, you chose to do nothing. You just sat there and let them make me feel awful. How am I supposed to feel after that?" Jake looked pained, his shoulders slumping as he let out a long sigh. I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to make things worse. "By doing nothing, you made it worse." I shot back, my anger flaring. "You let them walk all over me. And you didn't even try to stop it. Do you think I can just ignore that?" He ran a hand through his hair, pacing in frustration. I wasn't trying to hurt you, Amanda. I just didn't want to cause a scene in front of them. I shook my head, the hurt flooding me again. It's not about causing a scene, Jake. It's about me feeling like I matter. I deserve better than that. Silence hung heavy between us for a few moments. Then I spoke again, quieter now, but with no less conviction. I'm not staying in this situation anymore. I need space. I need you to think about what's more important, your family or your wife. Jake's face crumbled. For the first time, I saw genuine guilt in his eyes. Amanda, please don't leave. We can work through this. I promise I'll talk to them. I raised a hand to stop him. No. I'm not going to just sit here waiting for things to change. I've waited long enough. Maybe I should have left years ago, but I'm not going to pretend anymore that this isn't hurting me. I need time to think. If you really care about this marriage, you'll understand that. I turned to leave the room, but Jake grabbed my arm gently. Please, Amanda, please don't do this. I can change. I will. I looked at him, torn between wanting to believe him and feeling so deeply let down. I don't know if I can believe that anymore, Jake. I pulled away, walking toward the door. I'll stay with a friend for a while. I need you to figure out what you really want. I can't do this anymore. I gave him one last look, my heart breaking, but I didn't know how else to handle it. If I stayed, I'd only resent him more. If I left, maybe I'd finally find peace. I slammed the door behind me, feeling the immense weight of the moment settle in. The car ride to my best friend's house was quiet, but in my mind, everything was deafening. My heart raced, my emotions a swirling mess of anger, sadness, and fear of the unknown. I hadn't expected it to come to this. I'd thought we would figure it out eventually, but now, I truly didn't know if we could. The next few days passed in a blur. Jake sent message after message, but I couldn't bring myself to reply. I wasn't even sure I wanted to. Part of me wanted to give him another chance, to let him prove himself, but another part was simply too angry, furious at his family for their constant belittling and at him for letting it happen. He kept saying he was sorry, that he didn't mean to hurt me, but his words felt hollow, echoing promises made and broken countless times before. Then, on the third night, I received a call from Linda. I hadn't talked to her in over a week, and I'd been dreading this moment, knowing it would only add to my stress. When I picked up, her voice was sharp, demanding, like she was entitled to my time and attention. Amanda, what's going on? Why are you making such a big deal out of all this? We didn't do anything wrong, she said, her tone dripping with passive aggression. I couldn't believe it. Even after everything, she still couldn't see it. I took a deep breath, fighting to keep my cool. I'm not talking to you right now, Linda. Not until you realize how you've treated me all these years. You've made it clear that I'm not welcome in your family, and I'm done pretending like it's okay. There was a long pause on the other end. You're overreacting, Amanda. This isn't how we raised Jake. I don't know why you're making all this drama. Drama? I scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. It's not drama, Linda. It's called standing up for myself. I'm done letting you walk all over me. Her response was venomous. If you think you can just break up this family, you're wrong. You're nothing without Jake. You should be thanking us for taking him in when he needed it. That was the exact moment I snapped. I wasn't going to let her belittle me another second. You know what, Linda? I've tried. I've tried for years to get along with you, to make this work. But I'm done. If Jake doesn't wake up and realize how toxic you all are, then maybe he's not the person I thought he was. Maybe I'm better off without all of you. I hung up before she could say another word, my hands shaking from the intensity of it all. But there was no turning back now. The gloves were off. I couldn't go on like this. Not with him, not with his family. Something had to change, and I wasn't going to be the only one putting in the effort anymore. The only question now was, would Jake finally realize it was time to choose, Or would I have to walk away for good? That night, I texted Jake, "I need space. If you don't get this, then maybe it's over." I pressed send and sat there waiting, my heart heavy, but with a fierce resolve. The next morning was a blur of mixed emotions. I woke up feeling a strange lightness, like a huge weight had been lifted, but also an unfamiliar anxiety gnawing at me. The silence between Jake and me was deafening, and I wondered if this was really the end. I hadn't heard from him since I'd sent that text, and part of me was relieved. I had finally taken control of my own life. But another part of me was terrified of what this decision meant for us, for our future. I spent the day with my best friend, Marie, talking through everything, my frustrations, my anger, my fear. She was the one who kept reminding me that I deserved better, that I wasn't asking for too much. But I knew deep down that even with all the support in the world, the final choice was mine. And I still didn't know what would happen after I made it. Later that evening, as I scrolled mindlessly through my phone on Marie's couch, a sense of dread washed over me. My phone buzzed with a message from Jake. Just his name on the screen was enough to make my stomach twist. I hesitated, staring at it for a long time before opening it. The text read, "I'm sorry, Amanda. I'm not perfect, but I never meant to hurt you. Please, I don't want to lose you." For a second, I almost felt a pang of sympathy. But the more I read it, the more I realized it wasn't enough. It was just words. He'd said the same thing countless times before, and yet, nothing ever changed. I took a deep breath, my thumb hovering over the reply button. Then I noticed something else, a missed call from his mom, Linda, just hours after I'd hung up on her. I frowned, a fresh spike of annoyance, but I couldn't ignore it. I couldn't keep running away from it all. I pressed the callback button and waited as it rang. "Hello." Linda's voice was sharp, but I could hear something else beneath it now. Was it panic? Regret? "Amanda, listen. We need to talk," she said without preamble. "This has gone too far. Jake is a mess. He doesn't know how to fix things with you, but he's really sorry. You've got to stop pushing us away." I felt my chest tighten. "What do you want from me, Linda? You don't get it. You've treated me like I don't matter for years, and now suddenly you want to act like we can just fix everything with an apology? It doesn't work that way." I could hear her sigh on the other end. "I never said it would be easy, Amanda. But we're family. You're part of that family now. And you need to understand that we all have our flaws." "Flaws?" I repeated bitterly. "You don't get to play that card, Linda. It's not about flaws. It's about respect. And you've never shown me that." She was silent for a long moment, like she didn't know how to respond. Finally, she spoke, but this time, her tone had shifted. It wasn't as forceful, not as accusatory. It was almost pleading. "Jake is hurting, Amanda. I know you are, but you have to understand he's been under a lot of pressure. We don't want to lose you. Can you please just talk to him?" I laughed bitterly, shaking my head even though she couldn't see me. "You think this is just about him? This is about all of you. I've been trying for years, Linda. And I'm tired. I'm tired of feeling invisible in my own marriage. I'm tired of being ignored. I'm tired of having to fight for basic respect. It's exhausting." There was another pause on the other end. When Linda spoke again, her voice was quieter, less confident. "I don't know what to say, Amanda, but please don't make a decision you'll regret. Think about Jake. Think about your marriage." I was seething inside, but I tried to calm myself. "I'm thinking, Linda. I'm thinking about how I deserve more than what I've been getting. If Jake can't understand that, then maybe this isn't the marriage I thought it was." I ended the call before she could say anything else. It felt like the right decision. But at the same time, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that I was on the verge of something huge, something irreversible. I had already made my mind up, but part of me was still clinging to the hope that Jake could prove me wrong, that maybe, just maybe, he would wake up and finally choose me. But if he didn't, what then? The next morning, Jake showed up at Marie's house unannounced. The moment he walked in, I could tell he was a man desperate to fix things. He had a wild look in his eyes, like he'd been up all night thinking about everything. But I wasn't sure I wanted to hear his excuses. "Amanda, please, can we just talk?" His voice was pleading, his face drawn and tired. I stared at him for a long moment, crossing my arms. I wanted to say something snarky, something bitter, but I didn't. I knew this moment mattered more than any of the little insults I had stockpiled in my mind over the years. "Fine," I said quietly, leading him to the living room. "Talk." He sat down on the couch, but he didn't seem to know where to begin. He looked at me, then down at his hands, fumbling for words. "I know I've messed up. I know I haven't been there for you, and I know my family's treated you badly, but I'm trying, Amanda. I don't want to lose you. You're everything to me." I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding, my heart still pounding in my chest. It was almost too easy to want to give in, to let him apologize and forgive him, to go back to pretending everything would be okay. But something inside me stopped me cold. "You can't just say words, Jake," I said, my voice steady but full of a deep, tired hurt. "You have to show me. You've been saying this for years, but nothing's changed." He nodded, clearly desperate. "I'll change. I swear I will. I'll talk to them, make them understand. We can fix this. Please don't leave." I was quiet for a moment, thinking. I didn't want to give him false hope, but I didn't want to completely shut the door on our marriage either. But I had to know that he was willing to fight for me. Not just with words, but with actions. "You're going to have to do more than talk, Jake," I said, my voice softening slightly, but the resolve was still there. "And I need you to make a choice. It's me or your family. You can't have both. Not if they continue treating me like I don't matter. You have to choose." The silence between us was heavy, suffocating. Jake's face twisted with conflict, his jaw clenching as if he was processing the impossible choice I was asking of him. And in that silence, I realized that maybe this was it. Maybe this was the moment that would define the rest of our lives. And I would never let him forget that. Jake stood there, his face a mixture of shock, guilt, and utter confusion. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. The tension in the room felt unbearable. I had given him a choice, one that seemed so clear to me, but clearly wasn't for him. And honestly, I was done waiting for him to decide. I stood up slowly, not breaking eye contact, my heart beating a steady rhythm in my chest, my resolve unwavering. "You have to understand something, Jake. I've been fighting for us for years, fighting to make your family see me, fighting to make you see me. But I can't keep doing it alone. I can't be the one to always make excuses, to always wait for things to get better, for things to change. I've sacrificed too much of myself, and I'm not willing to keep losing who I am just to keep this going." Jake finally spoke, but his voice was weak, almost pleading. "Amanda, I'm sorry. I've never meant to hurt you. I'll talk to them. I swear I'll make it right. Please don't leave me." But the truth was, I didn't believe him anymore. I didn't believe in his promises. His family would never change, and neither would he, not without making the kind of sacrifices he wasn't willing to make. And the more I looked at him, the more I realized that I was the only one who had truly been trying to make this work. "You should have made these changes a long time ago, Jake," I said, my voice cold but firm. "You've had years to figure this out, and all you've done is show me that I'm not worth the effort. I've spent too much time waiting for you to choose me. But you've never really chosen me, not truly. And I'm not going to keep sacrificing my happiness just because you're comfortable with things as they are." His face paled as the full weight of my words hit him. For a moment, I thought he might break down, but I was done being the emotional crutch he always leaned on when things got tough. "You're right," I said, taking a deep breath. "It's time for me to make a choice too. And I choose myself. I deserve better than this. I deserve someone who will fight for me, not just apologize when things go wrong. Jake's eyes were wide now, and for the first time, I saw the fear in them. Fear of losing me. But it was too little, too late. I had already made up my mind. "Take care, Jake," I said quietly, walking toward the door. "I'm done." I don't think I'd ever seen him look so lost, but I knew in that moment that there was no going back. I left the house, not looking back, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders with every step I took. I wasn't going to be anyone's second choice. I wasn't going to be ignored, dismissed, or treated like I didn't matter. As I walked out into the crisp evening air, I felt a sense of freedom, like I was finally reclaiming the life I had almost lost. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel guilty for choosing myself. The next few days were a whirlwind. Jake called, texted, and even showed up at my door, begging for another chance. But I wasn't interested in the words he said anymore. Actions spoke louder, and his actions had shown me all I needed to know. I finally blocked his number and made the decision to move out of our shared apartment. I didn't care if it meant starting over. I had never felt so empowered, so certain of my worth. I wasn't going to settle for anything less than what I deserved. I didn't hear from Jake for a while after that. His family tried to reach out, but I had nothing left to give them either. I knew they would never truly change. Months later, I looked back at that moment as one of the best decisions I'd ever made. I had rebuilt my life. I had rediscovered who I was and what I wanted. And as for Jake, he eventually reached out again, but by that time, I was already in a new, healthy relationship. A relationship where I felt respected, loved, and valued for who I truly was. It was clear that Jake's family would never change. But I had changed, and that made all the difference. I walked away not just from him, but from the version of myself that had allowed his family to dictate my worth. And in the end, that was the most powerful thing I could have done. I learned that sometimes, walking away from something or someone is the best way to teach them what they truly lost.